Julie Lapham, and I live in Missoula, Montana. Although I'm licensed in multiple states, I think I'm up in 7 or so. But I do a bulk of my business in Montana, although I do a lot in Washington and Idaho also, mostly construction. I'm with Churchill Mortgage. I've been a lender for about 24 years. And so, yes, I love my job. I mean, getting good at what you do and sharing that, as you mentioned, paying forward is just really what gets you out of bed in the morning. So
love that so much. Okay, so how did you start? I know that like when I started 30 years ago, I couldn't spell FHA or VOR or VA or whatever. They were speaking a completely foreign language to me. So how did you start? Support, ops, sales? How did you get started?
So I always tell the story when I teach the first time homebuyer class. To take a step back, I ended up as a loan officer because I was in advertising. I was in newspaper advertising and kind of outgrew the position. And a contractor friend of my husband's and I just suggested, like, you should go talk to this gentleman about being a broker, a mortgage broker. And I mean, we had a mortgage. I'd gotten a mortgage about a year and a half prior to that. And I was like, I can't tell you anything good about my experience when I bought my first house. And, but that was back in the day. You've been in the industry a long time. You remember, we didn't even send loans through underwriting until after we closed. Like, you remember the days, right?
Yeah.
So
we use fax machine to get our credit reports, right?
Right.
We had off things on the site.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. And so I walked into this gentleman's office, and in an hour I had a new job. I was with him for a year. Ethically was just a little, it wasn't like the best fit for me and what I wanted to do with my career. So I opened up my own brokerage with another person, and we had that for 6 years. Compliance starting to get to be a big deal in our industry. And then I went to a larger company. But that's really how I literally walked in, and we had a good rapport, and he hired me. I had no experience other than I cut a mortgage payment every month. But when I teach the first time homebuyer class, I always like to tell my story about the first time I bought a house. I'm not a very easily intimidated person, and I was very, very reduced to tears at times. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know how to ask it. I would ask something, I would feel silly. I would get a short answer. I couldn't get a hold of my loan officer. I just got shuffled through the process. And here at that time, while it was a $140,000 purchase, but that was, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, it was a big financial decision. And I did not feel like I made the best decision for us because I didn't know what to ask. I wasn't offered any information. And when I became a loan officer a couple years later, I vowed I would never have a client go through that. In fact, when we get to closing, my closing there were 6 people. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, sign here, sign here. I'm never going to have a closing like that. Any client of mine that we get to closing is going to be laughing, taking photos with the big key, or, and have a wonderful experience. And out of all those years, even when I was a younger loan officer, any information or strategy or whatnot, I'm going to give it to my clients, and they're going to be able to recoup, have all those years of experience of mine to make those good financial decisions, because we close thousands of mortgages. Mm-hmm. They're going to close 2 or 3 in their lifetime. And so they get my thousands of mortgages experience. And we get to closing, and every client I meet, I learn something new, whether it's about myself or about them or about what they do, but in a nutshell, I became a loan officer because I literally walked into it. But what I learned is but what I learned from it, and what I get to, the information that I get to educate and whatnot, is just really what fuels me.
I love that.
So there you go. It was a long answer to your short question.
No, I love it. And this is really about you and what makes you tick as a loan officer. And it sounds like that experience in your life was a catalyst to how you run your business today.
Right. Well, I joke, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an ENT. I'm not saving lives, but sometimes I feel like I am. Yeah. I was on a call with a client this morning in tears. She is trying to do this loan with this large company, and since September, in tears. And I mean, within 10 minutes, she was relaxed. We talked about strategy. But I mean, I just, why would you ever want to have a client go through that? Any person. Anyways.
Right.
So there you go.
Right. Right. I love it. I love it so much. Okay. So defining moments that were early in your career when you realized you could succeed in the mortgage business. Like you were like, this is my jam. I'm going to be good at this. When, what was that? Was there a time that you figured that out or?
Honestly, it's all really a blur. I will say that I've always been fortunate to produce. I will say, probably right before COVID. I mean, if you remember COVID, I think that year COVID, I closed 479 loans, just me and my processor, and I, just being available. And I think that's one of my reputation. Call Julie because she's available. She's going to help you, right? Call Julie. I think that's really 6 years ago or so is when I just kind of catalyst, and I just over that time, I just started gaining the reputation of, the quality and the availability. And I think that's kind of when I started, my production kind of went up. And I really just attribute that with the art of listening, right? I don't tell people what loan program to use. I don't tell people what they need to do. I give them their options and I explain to them the benefits, the pros and cons of that. But yeah, I would think it was around that time, but honestly, I'm so busy and fortunate to be busy, kind of a blur. I don't know. That's what I got.
And I think you bring up a very good point. And I found this for myself and the team that surrounded me is, you have to kick it into another gear, right? It's like maybe in that 6 years ago, right? You were driving on a 35-mile-an-hour road, and all of a sudden we're driving 85 on a freeway, right? And we're going 5 over the speed limit, right? We're like on overdrive,
right?
But then when we came out of COVID and then we went through the taper tantrum of 22, right? Where the rates went up like 2 points in a month.
Right.
You were so used to that pace. So I felt like for me, I had to kind of transition my brain and like, okay, I'm ready to run at this pace. Now I've got to get a new marketing strategy, right? Because the refinances of the 2s and the 3s and all those things are gone.
Right.
And so for me, I had to be open to learning and open to trying new things. What were some of the things you did to pivot after all that? Because I know for me, I had to. It was like a thing.
Yeah, you know what? I really hate to disappoint you, but I didn't. I mean,
good. Well, God love you. God love you. Because I felt like I had to I was like, okay, I really want to stay at that click of, 500 plus units or, and then getting purchase business. I mean, it's not drop down refinances, ACE PDR appraisals. It's not, VOIs. It's not click, run them through the process and close and get them a lower rate anymore. It was like back to coaching and counseling and buying new homes and,
Right. I remember the first time I actually had a weekend because of that taper, like you mentioned, and it was so odd. And I felt like I had like 2 weeks off and I had 2 days I didn't work. And I was like, wow. And I think then I had like another one and I was like, wow.
Wow.
But I, like you said, you kind of shift gears, but I think that probably was about the time then I started kind of focusing also on some more construction.
Oh,
everybody refinanced into those low percentage. Nobody was giving up their house. And I don't know in the areas that you're in, but a lot of our markets, there's such a lack of housing that there's nothing else to do other than construction. And so I really kind of got hooked up with some really good builders and manufacturer dealers to, pivot. Although at the time I didn't really look at it like that. And like, again, I hate to disappoint you. I don't have a strategy in the sense like, okay, well, I have to close 5 more loans this month. That's not how I approach my business at all. I do the work. I make my connections. I enjoy what I do, and it all just
works out.
I
agree with that. It's
you know?
it's if you do the right thing and you continue and you're doing the task though, because I'm guessing you are doing a full-time job. I mean, what I hear you saying is I work and I work a career, not I show up 20 hours a week and
Right.
you're working it as a career and you're doing all the tasks that
Right.
you need to do, right? In order
Right.
to bring the business in,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Well, you give the people what what they want or what they
Yeah.
need, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I had one of our, the owner of the company reach out about, our production goals. And like, oh, you're almost to the founders club. And I just was like, I didn't look. That's not, and I understand that's a great sales tactic. And I think that's good for some people. I just don't approach, I'm very different in the sense that I just don't approach my business that way.
Well, and a couple things I noted that you brought up is first home buyer classes. You
Yep.
teach those. So talk about that, kind of how that was that part of that time that you changed your business strategy, or was it you've always done
That's
first
just
time home
something, that's
buyer
just a
for 24
volunteer
years?
thing. I'm asked to do it. It's a volunteer thing. We don't get, compensated.
No.
Usually a lot of people in those classes are people that I sent there,
Oh,
so that,
yeah.
so that's really great.
You're educating your customers.
Yeah, we do, back in the day, we did put on, realtors would ask us to present and things like that. And we do go to real estate offices and things like that. But for me, I just really enjoy making those personal connections and building those relationships and being a resource. Every time I go to a real estate meeting, I always say, look, I'm not the lender on the transaction and something doesn't seem like, it just doesn't seem right or doesn't make sense or you don't understand it, give me a call. And I'll explain to you the guideline, right? We all have very similar guidelines, right? We're all off Fannie and Freddie and, give me a call. And so I find that being a resource for a lot of people, whether I'm on the transaction or not, it's like the gal that called me today, she was sent to me from an engineer that did a cert for her on her manufactured home. And the poor thing is just in tears, and so just building those relationships and that trust, it's such an amazing thing. And so for me in my business, I don't go into making those relationships thinking that, well, I'm going to get 2 loans out of this. That's not how I approach things. It just happens to work out that way.
Right. Well, you bring up a really valid point. So how you naturally do it, but if somebody's reading the book and they're like, well, how did Julie build trust? I mean, it seems like it's easy thing to say, but it's not. And it could be just intrinsic to who you are in your soul. But I think there's some degree of empathy or something that is with you that helps build that trust, right? Or over time, or follow through, or you've set good expectations with people. And so they know they can call you. I mean, what do you think it is? If somebody's reading the book and they're like, hey, she said build trust, but what is that really like?
Well, I think that, sharing information is a great way to build trust quickly, right? I send out a weekly newsletter and I always try to put a snip in there of something that people might not know, right? I was asked to go to a real estate company and talk about, real estate agents don't understand how people can utilize the equity in their house to buy another home. Like, I don't know in your market, but contingency offers are very difficult, right? Well, how do we get around that? I had no idea that you can use, let's do a bridge, let's do a HELOC, let's do, and so providing information that people don't know is a very easy, fast way to gain their trust, and I always say, like, you're the expert, right? And so you just need to convey that, right? But in order to get that information, you have to listen and understand what the need is, right? And I think a lot of loan officers forget it's not about you, right? And it's not about you, and it's not about your paycheck, and it's not about what numbers you got to hit. It's about the borrower and it's about getting them in the best scenario. But building that trust comes from listening and sharing the information. And for me, I just got a new client this weekend that had already gone through 2 loan officers and they can't tell them how to get to a $2,500 mortgage payment. Well, did you consider a temporary buy down? Did you consider a permanent buy down? Did you consider? No idea what I was talking about,
It was just Greek.
10 minutes later, I get an application and I get a call from the realtor. I mean, it's just, sharing information, but and it's okay. When I talk to new loan officers, it's okay if you don't know all that information, but the World Wide Web is a pretty amazing thing.
YouTube University, right?
Right? YouTube University, it's not. And so no matter if it's just a little of information or something very specific, sharing is a good way. People see you as an expert pretty quick.
Well, let's talk about database. And then I want to talk about who was a mentor in your life when you were a younger loan officer, because I know I had them and they were really, if somebody's new and reading this and they're like, oh, how am I going to be Julie? I mean, gosh, I think that there's they need to see that there's a way and a mechanism, but it usually comes from good mentorship and being a good student of the business. But first, let's talk about your database, because I hear you hinting at that. The engineer, engineer, maybe you've never done his loan, but if he's in your sphere of influence, I call it, he's sending you business. I mean, that's so fantastic. So database management is very critical to you. Is that what I hear you saying? I mean,
I do. We have a CRM. It's, constantly sending out, we have, that engineer is not on it. He's very old school. He comes to town. I take him out for a glass of wine.
There you go.
We talk about bears. He likes to watch wildlife. But again, it's a personal connection, right? And he's fascinating. He does engineering for all the large ski resorts. Fascinating. I just ask him about his business because it's really interesting. But yes, keeping a good database is important. Following up with your clients. I'm super old school. I literally have a planner that I write in. If I talk to a client and I don't hear from them, they go on my calendar and then I know to reach out to them. But, follow up and being reliable, going back to that trust portion is a really big deal, right? I'm going to get back to you later today. You get back to them later today. I have had so many clients that I have been fortunate to work with because their loan officer hadn't called them in 2 days. Like, how's that possible? When you started, we didn't even have smartphones. Right? I mean, I remember the first client that wouldn't communicate other than text, and I had to learn how to text. Right? I know, it's crazy. But my point is that in this day and age, with all the technology we have, it's so easy. Tell a client, I didn't get to your file today. I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. You send a text, So CRM, database, it's all very important to track your people. My cell phone, I keep really good notes on my cell phone. I talk to a client, I've got all my notes on my cell phone. So the next time I talk to them, if I didn't talk to them in 2 months, they call me, I'm in my phone you were getting divorced. Right. And it's crazy how people get excited. You remember those things. It's not difficult.
Well, because I think it's intimate. I think that the mortgage process, one thing we maybe forget is it's an intimate process, right? They tell you everything about every financial piece, and you probably learn a ton of things about that person. And then they close their loan and they're like, wait, Julie's my best friend. So I just told her everything about me. And I have people that call and the girls on my team are like, Mandi, why do people think you are like their BFF? And I said, because I want to be. I want to care about them. I want it to be personal. I believe that the mortgage process is special because we are building generational wealth.
Right.
But back to your point of how you keep track of things, I don't really think it matters how people do it. But to your point, okay, I use my cell phone. I use my calendar. I make notes in my phone. Those are all good tips. I mean, back when I started, I had a yellow notepad and it had a circle by it. I hadn't done it. If I had a check mark, I finished it. And I just had a button up where I didn't leave my day with any circles open. It was silly, but it was my process. And I think that a lot of folks maybe need to define the process, that works for them.
Yeah. And I think that lending these days, you talk to a lot of people and the trajectory, with all the AI and all the online, which we have all those bells and whistles too, but I personally do not feel, I think that there is always will be value to the personal connection to help people make those financial decisions. And it's not going to be from somebody making really little amount of money working out of the basement in their grandma's basement because they got hooked up online. I mean, yeah, there are always clients that will maneuver that way, but for me, what I provide for my clients, if that's something that you don't like, then you go to the guy in the basement in your grandma's, but
Yeah.
but for me, and that's just how I structure my business and what keeps propelling me forward. I mean, getting to a closing, where you've got, a single person with a dog or a family or moving, two of my closings yesterday, they had babies and had to upgrade into a larger house, and hearing them talk about the big yard for their child to play in. I mean, how special is that?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But I completely recognize that some of your readers also probably are going to be reading this book and approaching things a lot differently. I'm just a little more holistic because that's what I get out of it.
That's why I love the book idea. And that's why I was so grateful that you said yes, is because every originator I've spoken with for this book does it their own way.
Right.
And they're not looking around to see what other originators are necessarily doing. They're monitoring and is being a student of the industry, but they each have their own flavor. Like their playbooks are all very different, like how all originators that are top producers do it. And so I found it fascinating as I visited with top originators that your playbook and my playbook may be very different, but we continue to succeed in our businesses, right? So it's been a fun thing to see.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved. That's why I really wanted to include more than just my story, because a reader may say, oh, I connect with Julie, or I connect with Mandi. I get this. I feel this. I can get my arms around this, and I can grow my business based on that thought process. And so that was the catalyst for me to find friends that also were cool people. So
yeah.
Okay. So mentor. Oh, you want to?
Yeah. What I was going to say about the mentor. In all honesty, I never had one. I mean, and I just, when I started, and I was only at that first position for a year, and then a gal in the office and we went and started. I mean, it kind of like paved my own way and figured it out. Right. I did learn from some people that I work with how not to do business, how I didn't want to do business.
Yeah.
I'm very ethical in the sense that, I don't care if the loan amount is 50,000 or 5 million. Everybody gets my 150%, and that, and everybody, even they have a 580 credit score or an 800 credit score, they still get my 100. I'm not going to pick and choose who gets more of my time. That's not how it works with me.
Right.
Those clients that have that 580 score that you get into a house will never leave you. Right. I get Christmas cards, I mean, I get, and that's just so touching and wonderful to be able to help them, so, I never really had a mentor per se. I was just fortunate to figure it out. I mean, there have been people that I have worked with over time that have been very inspiring to me, not necessarily loan officers. But I did, though, I had an assistant that came to interview with me 4 years ago, and she came with her LO license, but she didn't know anything about mortgages. And I hired her, and she shadowed me for 4 years, and she became a loan officer, and she's doing amazing. So regarding your question about a new loan officer, highly ideal if you find somebody seasoned to listen. She'd sit in my office and just listen to me talk to people. And what she learned from that was what information am I getting? What am I not getting? Like, what to ask, and she, when we would practice and we would role play and we would, and that was really helpful. So any new loan officer starting in this business, that's ideal. I have a client who is in a different line of work, and I got him, a wonderful veteran, got him into a house, and he called me the other day and was like, I really want to do what you do, but I recognize asking you to employ me is a really big ask. So I'm going to go to this online company that just feeds me business so I can cut my teeth, and then I'm coming back to you. And I was like, that's pretty clever, because doing that, you probably learn a lot what not to do.
Well, and you bring up a very valid point. I've always said that the more, whatever, to your point, if you can find somebody to work under that is a great loan officer and learn from them, the more transactions you can be a part of in any facet, the more you learn, the quicker you learn.
Right.
If you do your way of doing it was probably the hardest because you learned from every single transaction you did initially, right? You learned, and it maybe took longer. All those lessons I learned that were painful, you don't soon forget those. So it makes you very good loan officer.
Nobody else does either, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. So, okay. So I ask loan officers this, I ask my agent partners this, I ask top originators this. What's your why on your hardest days in this business when you lose a client to XYZ, or the inspection falls through and it's their third house and you have to write another approval letter, or you just had a hard day, right?
Right.
You got conditions and you're chasing stuff, and this business is relentless sometimes, and we're blessed to be in this business, and I'm grateful, and I never would change anything about it. But for me, I know that there are days I have to put my feet on the ground and get up and go. And there's got to be a why, like deep inside your soul, that tells you I am doing this. And what fires you up, what makes you want to do it. And I think it evolves over time, my why.
Right. Yeah, I agree also. You asked me, 8 years ago what my why was. It was to put food on the table, right? I mean, that's why I worked, but over time, that's what I realize is not why I do what I do. I can be doing anything, right? But when you have those days and you're beaten down, or you get a sale fail, or, fortunate, we don't really get many declines, but, when, or you've got to tell that client that they just don't qualify.
Now.
I got one from an online lender, and they told they were pre-approved. They were never pre-approved. $600 for an inspection. They were never pre-approved. No money in their bank account. $600 for an inspection. I mean, and it's just, and they're crying. The client I had today is just crying, and I just am determined. Well, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next month, and I'm going to help them get into a house one day. And that's what drives me, right? My veteran, like I was mentioning, that wasn't, she was never really pre-approved. I mean, there's just no way. There's, and check in with her every other week. Where are you at with first time homebuyer class? Where are you at with your savings? I am here with you, and I am going to get you there, right?
Right.
And when we do, and that day is going to be a really great day, and you have those days all the time. So when you don't have, you got to have the ups and the downs to appreciate the ups. And that's a total momism, but.
No, I am with you, sister. I think that's 100% true. My hardest times make me very grateful for the good.
Right. Exactly. So yeah. So for me, I always, when I just have a really rough day, like I focus on that end goal, and I'm determined. I joke with one of my assistants, my superpower is my optimism. Like I will have a very difficult day, and I will wake up in the morning completely 150% recharged and ready for a battle, and that's my superpower. Right.
I think that's such good advice, because some folks will take today's yuck and take it to tomorrow. And you're right. It is a superpower. Not everybody's blessed to be able to just brush it off and let's go tomorrow. Right. And I call it my reboot. Like I need to reboot myself. I need to go to bed and reboot myself and wake up tomorrow so I can crush life, right? And lead and be a good example for those around me. And so I agree with you. The food on the table for your kids, right? And when my kids were little to now they're, one's almost done with high school, one's in college. I find that I want them to see that I can be a good mom. I showed up for them for their events, and then I can also work and be a really good loan officer and continue to excel at my career. And so I love that you recognize, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was like food on the table, must do this. There is not another option for me. my family needs me, to now your catalyst is, hey, I really, really love to just help homeowners. It's like, it's like part of my, it makes me happy. Right.
Well, I think that clicked for me at one point is like, like I don't even, like, it wasn't anybody specific, but I just had, some client at some point, somehow just at a closing hit me to the core on, I couldn't have done without you. Like I would not be in my house. I was like, how impactful is that? You're talking about house, a home. You're talking about security. You're talking about, that's pretty amazing. When I tell people all the time, I love what I do, but it's a privilege to do what I do, in my opinion, and that people give me their trust and know that they're in very good hands, and I'm going to help them make really good financial decisions, and so it's, and there is, like I say, like there is no, I don't have a secret. When I'm asked with my company to give a talk, I'm like, I don't have I don't have a secret sauce. I don't have like, you got to do this and then you got to follow it. I just keep track of who I'm talking to, what we're talking about, because the next time I talk to them, I'm not going to waste their time going over what they told me before. I don't ask for documents multiple times. We keep track. Organization is huge, but you need that, right? And a lot of different jobs. So,
well, I think you nailed it. I think you would do good at giving a talk. Systems, right? People need systems and processes for themselves. They need to be organized. And that follow up or button up is super critical to your business. You felt like that has helped you ensure that you longevity in this business, right?
Right.
So let's talk about the LO roller coaster, so to speak, the highs, the lows, right? So some folks go through that, and top originators have kind of figured it out, how to manage both the fires of loans and the marketing continuing to keep loans coming in the door, right? It's like, so for you, what's your advice on that?
Well, like I said, I'm a little different animal in the sense that I don't market. I mean, we have our CRM that goes out. We have a billboard out right now. We go and talk to realtors. I don't do a good job at marketing. I always say, like, if I could actually get out of my desk and I can go to market, I could be closing a substantial amount of business. But the problem with that is that I probably lose my connection with my clients, which I don't want. Because that's what I love so much about my job. But I do see the value in, especially with younger loan officers or newer loan officers, is that you do have to constantly be marketing. But for me, checking in with realtors which is so easy to do. Checking in with realtors, hey, you got anything hard? You having a problem with anything? Can I help with anything? Just continuing those, because when you get a referral from somebody else who's very experienced, that's all the trust. Your trust just comes with that, right? That trust just gets come over. So, I'm not the best person to ask about how do you manage all the marketing and whatnot, because I'm in just a very fortunate position where.
Well, you've done it so long, right? I mean, in the beginning, I'm sure you grinded, and I'm sure you marketed your shorts off. I'm sure at some point you were talking to enough human beings every single day about mortgage.
Right.
That it now you are reaping those fruits of years of doing that legwork, right?
Right.
And you've built those trusting relationships, those trusted partnerships.
Right.
What advice do you have maybe for LOs that, they're like, I really want to have a deep connection with a realtor, but I have no idea how to even start?
Yeah, well, most people love to talk about themselves, especially realtors, right? And again, anybody you meet, no matter what facet it is, there's always something fascinating, in my opinion, right? I remember calling realtors that I didn't really know, because maybe they were the listing agent, right? And I would call them and say, back in the day, and be like, that was an amazing transaction. I'm fascinated to know how you listed the property in the way that you did. Like, let's go have coffee, right? And to hear their story and how they maneuvered their seller that's all it took to start building that relationship. Now, for me, I didn't do that because I want their business. It just worked out that I got their business but it was fascinating, and I wanted to understand because maybe I could do my job better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You came at it as a student to learn more, not
exactly,
necessarily
right.
to solidify the
Yep. And so
relationship
I
and get
think
their
that's a
business.
really good, I think reaching out to other people, a financial advisor, an insurance agent, an engineer, like how, you know, how do you do, when did you start? How did that work? And learning from them. And
Builds
then that's how
trust,
you
builds
start,
a
this is a
relationship.
building block to any relationship, right? Whether it's a
Yeah.
date or a client or a referral partner, right?
So maybe you've never had this, maybe, but we'll just go with it. So there's in my 30-year career, I can say that some agents I work with, a majority are absolute professionals, amazing human beings that really want to help people. But some when I was younger, for sure, took more than they gave to me in this business. And I think the breakup is hard, but it's necessary. And to surround yourself with like-minded, good humans that will help you in your business. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think when you get as busy as we do, I do agree with you in the sense that when you have a referral partner that is constantly pulling from you and getting the information and you're just not getting the clients. I had a realtor, it was like a month ago, I've never worked with before. It was a newer realtor, and I hopped on his client because they were working with an out-of-state lender. They were under contract for 3 months. I was like, I can get this done. Um, Went nowhere. And I jumped in, I put stuff aside, and he called me again. And, after a couple times, it's just the third time he called, I just maneuvered the conversation so it was a little more limited, right? And that's my decision, right?
Right, right.
I'm here to help, but I'm here to close mortgages. And the time that I spend with him is less time I have to spend with the people that are committed to working with me. So the breakup is hard, although I feel like you can break up without breaking up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You just, make sure it's clear on the what you can provide and in the timeline you can provide. But you do unfortunately have to make those decisions sometimes where it's
You
not a
have to value
reciprocal
your worth.
relationship.
You have to value your worth and your time, right?
Yeah,
And I think that that's really important.
and I appreciate you saying that because there's been many loan officers I've talked to over the years within our company or other companies that want to leave their companies. That's the first thing I say to them is know your worth, right? Um, the loan officer that I mentioned before, was really getting worked up and stressed out and that she's going to lose this transaction because he's just was just really struggling with this client. And I'm like, they're running you ragged, right? And you have to know your worth. You're providing the best that you can. And if they're just not accepting your advice or they're, at some point, or they started looking online at some point, like you have to go to bed at night knowing you did the best that you could. And that's all there is. But know your
Yeah.
worth it's a really great mantra. I totally agree with that.
Good. Yeah. And I think that's good advice for any loan officer and well, actually any human to know their worth and know what they bring to any situation and know what their ROI is on their time. Because I think
Right.
sometimes we don't necessarily I look at my ROI, I'm like, well, Julie's spending this hour with me or 45 minutes. This costs you something, right?
Right.
There's something else you could do. And I think sometimes, well, especially newer LOs are like, well, I went golfing with them. I went, and I'm like, how many times have you golfed? Because if you've golfed 3 times and you have no transactions together, you're probably you've got to change the golf strategy because the time you spent golfing, what business could you have been generating, right?
Well, I think if you're golfing, well, it sounds like if you're golfing 3 times, you're just liking to golf.
Yeah,
But like, come on. My point is like,
Don't
you,
do that, right? I'm fine with that. I'm not judging,
but you've got to change your strategy. It's sales, right? You're still
right.
sales, right? And even though
Yes.
we talk about, what motivates me and what, it is still sales. And if you have a referral partner that's just kind of dragging you along like that, you're not asking them the right questions, right? You need to call them out
Right.
on the carpet and be like, I've shown you that I am very good at what I do. What do I need to do to get your business? There's nothing wrong. And if you're afraid to ask that question, like, why am I not getting your business? You got to really think about what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think that's
like
great
I
advice.
have
Be direct, right? Be direct and ask the question.
yeah. I mean, I've told clients that I could tell her, shopping me, for example, and after, multiple, maybe a few times, what am I not giving you here? Or I want a pre-approval letter, but I haven't decided who I'm working with yet. I can't send a pre-approval letter if you're not committed to working with me. I
I
cannot
love
have my
that.
name when people, I worked so hard for such a good reputation. So when people see my name on that letter, that
It
means a
matters.
lot,
It
right?
matters.
You can go get an online lender or even a local lender that, like the veteran I mentioned that was never pre-approved, they had a pre-approval letter. And you know what? That lender, the next time that listing agent gets a pre-approval from that company, he's not going to take it.
Right.
So my point is like, there's not a problem even telling a client, like, what information am I not giving you to make your decision? Because, you know, your realtor needs a letter. I'm not giving you a letter. And I've had people being a little off put because I said that. But the reality is I'm not going to I can't keep giving you information
And
for
putting my
you could
name
take it
out
somewhere
there so you
else,
can go somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah.
so anyways, but yeah.
I
So
love that. I think that's fantastic
yeah.
advice. Like I want
Yeah,
to
but
work with those people that are committed to me and
right.
I'll help you get to the finish line.
But you get my 150%. I have picked up more clients on a Friday at 8 o'clock or a Sunday at 2 o'clock. I've had people call me like, well, Julie, it's a weekend. I know, but you're the only lender I know that will talk to my client today. Heck yeah, I'm going to talk to your client today. You know, because
Yeah.
people buy houses on the weekend. But
Yeah.
I think it's great that some loan officers have those boundaries, right? I think that's great that I don't work, at a company I came from not long ago, like online. I stop working at 5 o'clock and I don't work weekends. Well, I think that's great. You have boundaries, but you know what?
Be
I'm
ready
happy to
for
take all
whatever
those
the
clients that aren't going to be calling
yeah.
you.
Be ready for that subsequent you know, every causation has a reaction,
Effect.
right? And so as long as you're cool with that,
Right.
then
But it's
then
sales.
yeah, it is
I
sales,
got
right?
interviewed from a kid in college for his career class about, and I was asking him like, well, what does your job look like? Well, I really want to be done work at 4 o'clock. This is not a job for you. You know, so
A different job, friend.
yeah, so I'm sure there's one out there, but isn't it?
Well, a lot of sales jobs, right? I don't think it's just LOs, but I think most sales careers are not as shut off at 4 o'clock. For the
Right.
people that really knock it out the park.
Right.
If you want to be average, you can cut out at 4.
Absolutely.
Do that. It's absolutely fine.
Average?
And people like Julie and myself will basically take those clients and help them in whatever market we're in, right? I think
Right, because
that's awesome.
there's always somebody out there that is, there's always somebody out there who's going to work harder or do it better, right? But again, you just, you focus on, like you said, like what's your why, right? My why is, I really thrive to help people get to where they need to be as seamlessly as possible, right? That's what we do.
Well, and I think one thing that has always been with me is my integrity is not for sale. And there'll always be another loan. There'll always be another opportunity. But I think what I hear you saying is like, my reputation is mine. I own
Right.
that. My integrity is mine. I own that. And you built your business on that. And so people know that about you.
Right.
And that takes years, friends. If you're listening to this message, it takes years to get that. But once you have it, hold on to it dearly because
Right.
and continue to elevate yourselves, continue to elevate your game, and and protect those things, because money comes and goes. We've been in the market where the market sucked, and like in Boise, Idaho in 11, the average loan amount was 105,000. I'm with you, Julie. I don't care if you're a $50,000 loan or a $500,000 loan, you're a loan to me and you're my client, and I want you to get whatever you need. But I do think that the market giveth and taketh, but they can't take those things as long as you protect them at their core.
Yep. At the end of the day, you have to feel good about what you're doing, whether it was
yeah,
12
and that's
hour
what
day
I mostly hear you say, is that's for you. That is core who you are, you know.
Yeah.
And I love that so much. Okay, so what did I miss? What maybe advice, who you are, what makes you tick, business mix. I hear you say construction. Maybe if they find a niche program that works for you, that you can get your arms around and be really good at. I mean, what I know that there's more to that story.
You know, I kind of think I spilled it all out there. I think you got just the best of me there in our 40 minutes.
Girl,
like I don't, like I said, I wish, it's really amazing that you're putting your story down on a book and listening to other people, because, you know, we get so busy, you know, at the end of the day, and you look through your day and how many conversations you have, how many, you know, you never really, I don't feel like I really actually ever sat down and articulated and really thought about all those pieces that made me who I am today and why I'm successful. But it's amazing that you're writing your book, and I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, it's so fun. I'm so grateful you said yes, and that this is real, and we're going to get it done. And I'm super excited for you to be a part of it. And just thank you for your time again. I know ROI is important, and it's my great pleasure to meet so many amazing originators across the country doing great things in their communities and really caring and being part of the American dream of homeownership. And I feel blessed to even be a part of this. And I'm really grateful that they pushed me to do it, and you said yes. So
well, good. Well, if there's
anything else I can do, let me know. Montana. Where are you in Montana again?
Missoula. So Missoula, kind of south, mid west. University of Montana is here. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was unfortunate to live here, came to finish college, met my husband, and like half the people here couldn't leave. So then, you know, boomed, you know, in COVID, everybody trying to get out of cities. I think it qualified at least 3 out-of-state people a day working remote, because remote, you know, it's a thing. And it's a really beautiful, wonderful place to live. So I close loans in multiple states, but Montana definitely has my heart.
I know, sister. That's me for Idaho. So at any rate, Julie, it was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much. And if it's okay, if we need any follow-up content, can we reach out and connect?
You betcha.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to have a friend in Montana. I like fly fishing. So if I ever get up that way, I'll call you.
I don't fish, but my husband can give me some good tips.
Okay, good. Well, we can collaborate, and I think you drink wine or not, or something else.
Yeah, and I do have some good picks for spas, so you reach out to me anytime.
Okay, good. Bye,
All right,
Julie.
you guys take care.
Okay, bye.